Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded April 7th, 2021. Good afternoon, good evening, Franklin. How are you?
I am doing good. Long day.
Long day for me too. Not so much as like yesterday. I got up yesterday around 4 a.m. to work. Actually was tired yesterday. Slept in today. I think I got out of bed around 6 o'clock.
4 a.m. is late for you. What are you talking about?
No, 4 a.m. is about the right. I got up around 6 today and got a lot of things done. So I was cool. And then I'm back in marathon training. So hard to run today. Started to warm me out a little bit. It's actually warm here in Georgia. It's like 84 degrees outside, 82. Sun shining. Should be getting a lot of rain here in the next 3 or 4 days, which it should clear out this last little round of pollen, unless we're going to another wave, right? Another pollen surge. What about yourself? What's going on with you, man?
I'm getting ready for my OSEP class. Is that what it's called? So, the offensive security class. So I should be starting that Saturday night, Sunday, ready to go. I've actually had a pretty easy week. I've just been messing around on Try Hack Me and Hack the Box and getting back into that hacker mindset before I start the class. And that's really about it.
Yeah, I've been doing some interesting projects. I've been spending a lot of time in, identity type security products. Learned a few things. There are often times that you can do your job and there's some cool aspects of it, right? So, especially when the customer gets it, right? Especially when I'll self-describe when the customer says, I'm a difficult customer, it's going to be hard to please me. Okay. You telling me to give up or what are you telling me? And then you nail it and they go, nah, we don't need a pilot. Let's go ahead and go to production, right? We got to get this done. There's no time to, keep test driving. So you take that a little trepidation, right? But now the pilot is going well. Knock on wood, glass, or whatever. Got any wood around here? Something. So I've been spending a lot of time in more time than MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, that I choose to spend in, right? It too much in one softens you up in another, but this.
Well, you've been loving it though.
Well, the other side. That was last week. This week has been a good blend. I've touched all. I've had customers that had me touch a little bit of everything this week, so it was sort of fun this week. I got to touch MDO, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, helping out with a new solution that's going to be pushed out of private preview around being able to do more advanced anti-spoofing. I got to play with MDI, Microsoft Defender for Identity, also known as Azure Advanced Threat Protection. Learn some cool things about that. There's going to be some cool things coming down in private preview. I don't know if I can talk about it yet. Some customers are in it, but you're going to like the integration into the unified portal for 365 security. Also, of course, been in Sentinel. Had a very, I won't say unique, but just make you go, about a customer that has Mac, Microsoft Azure for Commercial, MAG, Microsoft Azure for Gov, and of course they want to cross-pollinate logging and being able to consolidate as well as for it also. Made me spin my head a little bit, right? I'm like, yeah, you can. I also got to touch MDE, of course, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. That was a little vexing. More and more customers are giving it on Linux a shot. And results
I've not worked with it on Linux, so.
So I got some Linux boxes, so it's time for me not just work on theory, because I had one. I don't know. I bummed it because I was using it for a syslog server. So I sort of bummed it. So I'm gonna build another one out.
Just spin it up in Azure.
Yeah, duh, right? I'm gonna do it going forward, right? And I'm gonna take my my Mac Pro and find the latest or the find the latest version of Mac OS that will run on this boat anchor. It's a super powerful box, right? But Apple says you can't run what is the latest OS revision? Space Junk, Snow Kitty, CyberCat. Who knows, right? So I got to get this thing running.
So, what version of Linux are you using to test Sentinel?
I'm using Red Hat 8, and I think it's 8, maybe a little bit later, and I'm running Ubuntu 18.04.
Okay.
Using both of those. Got that going. And I also touched. What's another one of the things? I actually got some CyberX stuff, so we're going to talk about it on a subsequent podcast. Not too bad.
Well, what's CyberX?
CyberX is Azure Defender for IoT or Internet of Things. Tell me, isn't that one of your favorite products right behind WatchList?
It's my new favorite product, I have to tell you. So you're laughing now, but yeah. So here's the thing: is that it's a great product, but the issue is that I had with it is the fact that I did the trial. When the trial ended, it just rolled right over to billing me $1,000, $2,000 a month, and nothing came in the mail. Hey, by the way, we're about to tag you for this much money. So when I found out, I said, okay, let me just go out and delete it out of my Azure resources. And no, that was a mistake because it kept billing me and billing me and billing me. So I called into support and said, can you get this to stop billing me? And they said, sure, and we're going to credit you. Of course, never got the credit, and I have another $1,000 bill coming in for for this. So I ended up canceling.
I'm not laughing at you, man.
I ended up canceling the subscription, and I have a long email chain with support. So my credit card company is credited me for the first $1,000, and they'll be crediting me for the second $1,000. So I ended up having to dispute the charge because the support people never followed through what they said, and they stopped getting back to me. So basically, I ended up canceling my subscription, which, by the way, was my MCT subscription, which gave me $150 a month credit, which I now no longer have because of this mess. So I'd like to have had Microsoft to be a little bit more, hey, we're going to start billing you. A nice little email about that would have been nice. And the second thing is, hey, if you don't want it anymore, here's how to cancel it so we don't keep billing you $1,000, $2,000 a month for the rest of your life. So I don't know what I did wrong, but lessons learned, and I documented everything, and Microsoft support said, hey, we're going to take care of it. They never did, and now my credit card company is taking care of it. But I still end up on the short end of the stick because I had to cancel my MCT Azure subscription with my $150 a month credit.
Well, the thing about that, I've had to do something similar. You can go back in 30 days because as long as you're in good standing, you can reapply or whatever the process. I haven't done it in a long time, and you'll get a whole different 1090. I hope you have a lot in there because if you think support for getting your money back for CyberX / Defender for IoT is hard, trying to get them to port any resources over from one tenant that you've terminated to another one, you got a better chance of teaching a cat how to fetch Jello, right? So that's not going to happen. You did do a couple good things. You did one thing right. Tell people. If you got to put a credit card on your account, if you are an American Express card holder, put it on them. They're always going to be customer friendly towards you. They will get you your money and tell the vendor you figured out. Our card holder says you do it until you prove that he or she is wrong. They're going to get their money. We're going to do a clawback from you, and you're out of gas.
The bottom line is I had when they realized I tried everything I possibly could to deal with the situation, then they're like, okay, they basically said, all right, we'll refund you and go back to them and have them figure it out. So we have some questions. Go ahead.
One thing, one moment to our listeners. One thing you got to be careful of. See, you're a real senior like me. And we don't read the instructions until it's time to troubleshoot. There is a box that even though you have to add a credit card to it, that you can say in the event that this goes blah, shut down the services. A lot of folks won't do that because they, oh my God, you made my credit card expire so and so, my entire organization go down. That's on you. Because I did it on my MSDN subscription. That if my MSDN goes over a certain amount, it won't charge my credit card.
Right,
Even
right.
though I have it on there, it'll just shut down and I'll get an alert. So you got to be very careful about those things. I did the same thing when I was using Active Directory domain services, and they charge by the objects 0 to 49,999, and there is no one per one. You get it whether you use it or not. So all of a sudden, I get a big old bill, and it which taught me a lesson. But luckily, I saw it because I got an alert around billing, and it said pending. So before it actually posted, I was able to get it resolved. Now it was easier to get it done with them, and I think it was because it was still in preview or something. So this is years ago. So they didn't want any bad press around it. But that's my story about well, not unauthorized building, but building going amok. We had a question for somebody on the
Yeah, so the question is around forecasting Azure Sentinel billing and also managing it in case there's a huge spike.
well, that's easy. There are a lot of ways you can do it. Okay. If you open up Azure Sentinel and then you have it still default, it'll pop up some sample queries. Okay. In there are numerous billing queries. Now, what I did was I went inside just assuming you have rights to your Azure subscription as well as this is the access to view the subscription. And to those who are, and I assume that if you listen to this podcast, we have everything from novices to, Frank
Rod Trent.
Gimberg, Rod Trent, right? Here's simplistic of how Azure works. A tenant is where you put stuff, and a subscription is how you pay for the stuff. And a directory is the identity of your tenant and your subscription so that the identities that reside in it. So just remember that. Anything you do, a tenant is where you put stuff, resources, resource groups, compute. A subscription is how you pay for stuff, and an identity is like who you are, what you know, what you can prove, and what you can have, right? So once you understand those three building blocks, everything else is gravy, right? You get an all R back and all that other stuff. That's just people trying to prove you how smart they are, right? But inside of billing, you can go inside the cost analysis thing and create you a query or a filter, save that filter, and then you can set up email alerts, which is what I do. So you can also go into CAP. So if you go into the log analytics workspace that you have Sentinel deployed as a solution, and you go into the advanced settings, you can put a cap there to say if this amount of data and or spending, you can, that's it, right? You'll get some subsequent alerts. It won't cut you off at the knees, but there are numerous predictive KQL queries that can say, hey, this is what happened. So, and here's the cool part about it. All you got to do is Bing it. Bing, how do I predict Azure Sentinel costs? You'll get a bunch of KQLs, and if you go to the Azure Sentinel official Git, right there, yeah, easy. So for those, and then you get to change your billing if you're in a commit mode every 31 days. Now, pay as you go, you want to track it, right? The commit 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 gigabytes a day, you don't have to guess. The price is the price. So it's really only applicable for pay as you go. Because if you're paying for 300 gigabytes, whether you ingest 1 gigabyte or 300 gigabytes, the price is the price, right? Hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm talking to him now.
Mhm.
All right. I'm not very good at multitasking.
Yeah.
All right. So, um, yeah, so we have some topics this week. Let me share
I,
my screen.
I sent some links over.
Yeah, I decided not to talk about any of that. I'm kidding.
Okay. Plus,
So
I got one right here. I forgot to include. I think this is going to be interesting.
you're gonna send it to me?
Yeah, I can send it to you, or you can Bing it. Let me Bing it, and then I'll put it in show notes. Give me a second.
All right. My first thing is this.
You need to go back one.
Go
That's
back one.
episode 2. So if you click previous episode, right, it started the blog.
You talking to me? Oh,
Yeah, I'm talking.
previous Oh, yeah, no, I'm here. Don't worry about that.
There you go. Okay.
So here's what I want to talk to you about first.
Mm-hmm.
Where did playbooks go, man? So,
What do you mean where playbooks go? The playbooks are called automation now. You
all right,
finally got your tenant slash
I,
subscription slash
I'm
Sentinel
kidding. I'm
environment
kidding. I'm
updated.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So, there's been some changes since the last time we actually, just me and you, have actually done this show.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of them is that is that Playbooks has dropped off the configuration menu, and now we have this thing called automation. So when you jump into automation, you now have two tabs, one called automation rules and one called playbooks. So what is the difference and what is this automation rules?
It's so put it this way: the automation rules were focused around helping the SOC operator, right? Rules, like I said, to essentially manage automation of incident handling. So they want to make the time from an alert from an event that hits a alert high watermark that manifests as an alert that you get enough viable intelligence or enough false positives that creates an incident to be able to automate a lot of this stuff, right? And so, but this is has a primary focus of being able to take I don't want to say mundane tasks, but take uh, frequently reoccurring alerts that generate incidents that are probably being deemed more of a false positive or benign thing and being able to automate that. And now you have that. And then if you really want to get inside, you can write a playbook, which is still a logic app that can maybe a little bit more detailed that can be outside of that, especially if you're trying to find yourself exiting the rim of Azure as far as what you're going to do as far as the remediation and or response. So it's six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. And I suspect that a lot of playbooks. See, there you go, right there.
All right,
Being able
so
to, yeah,
so the automation rule can fire off when an incident is created, right?
yep.
So, and you can do it based upon the analytical rule. So all this is basically happening outside of when we used to configure stuff with inside analytical rules, but we'll talk
Mm-hmm,
about that in a minute.
mm-hmm,
So the actions so you have the trigger when the incident is created, you have conditions,
mm-hmm,
which then lets you add in different types of uh, whatever the conditions are coming off the fields. Then
mm-hmm.
you have an action, which is run playbook, change status, change severity, assign owner, add tags. Um, and then you can do a rule expiration and then an order. So
So let
basically, okay, go ahead.
so sometimes the best way I explain something is to give an example of how I did it in another product. So let's talk about MCAS. I built a custom rule slash policy in MCAS because I had a customer that impossible travel was killing them by virtue of Tor browsers, VPNs, stuff like that. And they're like, this is noisy. And I said, well, have you had an incident that was legitimate of impossible travel where malicious intent? Nope. So what I ended up writing was a series of, I don't want to say conditions, but a series of if you don't see this and this and this and this and this, a bunch of and statements, but not writing and or statements like in red X or something like that. That's saying that the probability of impossible travel gets more valid if I also see these things: multiple login failures, login from anomalous IPs, uh, impossible travel, and I think I created something around uh, it's customer owned VPN. It was four things that I built this into a policy. And so what happens is even if I get the impossible travel, it kicks off and it runs a Power Automate to do a few things, and then it comes back and run a custom policy that I did to say, yeah, we saw that alert, but we didn't see multiple logins. We didn't see multiple login failures. We didn't see anonymous IP. We didn't see. Oh, I know what it was. Login attempt from a known bad IP address. IP is known to be blocked. So now the customer loves it because now they get a high watermark that says if I don't get four of these conditions, you can lower the severity, and now it goes down into that. And then I'm trying to figure out how to run it again to say if this doesn't happen within a certain amount of time, auto close that rule out. Think about taking all that stuff I had to do, and I'm making it much easier now here. You can see the conditions, right? Saying lower the severity, you know, look for another. Here's a cool one. Look for a subsequent alert related to this. And if you see this, then up the severity and notify this. So this automation rule is all about making you more efficient. Does that make sense? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave out of here. Let's go take a look at one of my silly analytical rules. Let me edit this.
See if Frank never commits.
So set the rule logic. So there's some changes. Let me move this out of my way. So there's some changes to the analytical rule wizard here. And we'll get to, well, we can go over to the automated response first. And you can now, on the analytical rule, add in the automation rules. Right.
You can add a new. It's super powerful.
So before you could you select multiple playbooks before, or only
I don't
one?
think you could. I
Right.
think
So
they
this
all
was
had to
their way
be.
around dealing with selecting multiple playbooks, is to go through automation rules. I'm wondering if we'll ever select playbooks here ever again and just do automation rules.
You
And this
you
is the
will,
future.
and I'll tell you why. Go back, and here's the big reason that you would go back to like you begin in this rule, or go to automation.
So, right.
Just back to the automation configuration pane. So if you go back and you go to create new rule, and then you see actions,
Yep.
and assign owner, right? And then add an action, and then you see, you know, that's one. Now go up to add condition.
But my thing is this: is that
Well, let me finish. You you
okay.
know you notice you don't see anything that extends out of it. Open a ServiceNow ticket. Do this. Go do this. Um, so I generally look at this is that if I can contain what I'm doing inside the environment that I'm in, and then if I need to call outside, I can say call this playbook that will send something to God
No,
forbid.
no, I'm not saying that they're not going to get rid of playbooks. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that to get around the limitation of only being able to select one playbook on the rule itself.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that at this point, should you just focus in on always using automation rules so you could do the multiple playbooks and all that fun stuff instead of being stuck with a limitation of selecting one here. So I think that people might standardize on utilizing the rules here, the automation rules, versus doing the select one thing here. Plus, you end up getting more logic involved during that process.
Especially if you want to try to embed a function or something. But other thing, what about some customers that been using Logic Apps for a while, right? And they don't want to discard the Logic Apps that they have, and they want to call it because it does something very specific,
Oh no, I
right?
say keep the logic apps. I'm just saying that you're just not going to be selecting it in the playbook list here. You'd always select it as part of
Oh
a.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
All
got it.
right,
I see
so
where you go.
let's go with the automation with the set rule logic here. So what is all of this stuff going on here now? All of these different entity types.
Remember when there was only 4 entities? Now you're getting all these different entity types. I think it was URL, hash, IP address, and maybe user. And the promise of these things were coming. So, you know, you tell me as part of forensics, the more entities that you can pivot across to be able to get some type of stitching and correlation, the better, right?
Yep.
So this is the promise that is being met by saying that, hey, we'll be able to bring this in. Now, something isn't buggy about this because when I try to set up some of these rules, it comes back and say, go check your parameters and go check your entity something. They was airing out on me, and I haven't
So
gone back and tested yet.
so the bottom line is they had to add in all of these new additional entity types when they started bringing over Defender related data, Defender for
Mm-hmm.
endpoint related data.
Mm-hmm.
So they were forced to end up putting all of these different entity types out there.
And it makes sense, because if you didn't, Sentinel will know what to make to do of it. Like, yeah, you have the capability in one product. I have
Right.
no idea what you're talking about.
Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is they really need to do something about this, about having way too many connectors and putting more in there. They need to limit that. No, I'm kidding. The list is just getting way too long here, so they're going to have to do something about that.
What do you mean?
Just saying, from the user interface, I'm getting tired of like spinning through here and.
Then don't do that. You see that
All right.
search?
Now,
so search on Microsoft.
let's talk about the Microsoft 365 Defender connector page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was no, I wasn't wrong. I'll never admit to that. So yeah, they're definitely doing the bidirectional incidents now. So you want to, it will ask you to disconnect creating incidents if you're going through the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint connector. And now they're going to set it up to do the bidirectional incident updating that's now configured through the Microsoft 365 Defender connector.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about this bidirectional updating.
It's something that you and I have always asked, that if I close an incident out in one place, can it have a little intelligence to say this has been investigated, has been closed on the other side, right? And maintain the investigation effort, right? So that's a big thing. If I did all this work, don't just simply close it and then I got to go pivot back to see who did what within it. So not only is it bidirectional incident closure and acknowledgement, but you should be able to understand the amount of effort in the investigation process, right, to ultimately lead to the close of it. So that this is just
Okay, so let me point out one thing real fast. In here, you have the different data that's coming across for Defender for Endpoint Device Info, network events, file events, registry events, logon events. And so this is what most of those new entity types are going to map to that are coming across. And of course, email and all that fun stuff will map to what's coming across here. Now, if I look at an incident that's come across from Defender with inside Sentinel, how do I get over quickly to look at it to where I have that fuller UI to perform actions on endpoints? How do I get over to there?
you can investigate, and then from the investigation in the lower left, based on the telemetry source of the alert slash incident, it'll pivot you to that portal. If you have redirect, you'll take you to the unified portal now, the one that we have been saying, hey, quit having podcasts about it.
So in Sentinel, there's a link that will directly jump you over into the Defender portal.
Yep.
From the incident, so then you can actually go and utilize that UI for collecting investigation packages from the endpoint and so on.
And it's going to happen for all of them. All right. MDI is going to be next. I think it's already there. And then MCAS should be there too. I think what's missing is 365, which is odd. But if you open up an
that would be odd, because I think that would actually be able to jump over to the investigation for that now is actually in the unified portal. So
yeah,
I would think.
Have you noticed another nuance about this connector? Is that the right connector? First of all, the nuance is no wonder you spend up all your money. Who needs all that stuff that you're bringing over? This is not Sysmon, right?
don't even get me started on that.
Yeah,
and we're gonna have two debates. One is Sysmon or not, or send over the Defender data, yes or no. Debate Sysmon, yes, no, and also where do you do your investigations with inside Sentinel or the unified portal over there. Those are three debates that hopefully we'll have, get some people on to do those debates.
I mean, it's what you're used to, is what you're skilled at, it's what you're comfortable in. I mean, technology is technology. I very rarely have found a single technology and or a vendor that is just so far ahead of everybody that it's not even worth looking at somebody else's product. No product is like that. All right. So it's whatever you're used to using. I'm working with a customer, and when I tell you they're using everything in Gartner's upper right hand quadrant, I'm like, how do you guys even manage your day? You know, but neither here nor there. They're rock solid. They got a bunch of smart folks, and these people have their silos, and evidently the communication, interoperability, and collaboration between the different security teams. I can't mention the customer, but they make it work. I mean, they make it work. Um, their SOC team may be the only one that I see that they get a lot of rest, a lot of sleep, and they're happy because the people that are responsible for the actual security products that they manage, the SMEs, they're rock stars. And like, all right, okay, I get it. Hey, speaking of connectors, before we go to our next topic, go back to the connectors real quick. That's the landing page for connectors. So go down to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. All right, open the connector page. This may be a good, or maybe a bad example. I might do MCAS. You see that? Cannot disconnect when Microsoft 365 is connected. So now the connectors acknowledge
Right.
each other. So now when you try to do certain things in other connectors, you have to either turn off, which I believe it would be the head connector or the whatever to be able to do this, right? So I had a customer, they pulled me in and without having enough context, like, oh man, this is broken. What's going on? What I should have done is immediately go through all the connectors and see what they had turned on. And they turned the Microsoft Defender on and it starts turning these things off,
Right.
right?
Well, which is
Uh,
right because the incident. So this only brought across alerts, and then it asked you. It said recommended, which I thought was silly, to
mm,
create the incidents, right? Which I always told people not to do.
yeah, yeah.
So now it should be managed in the bi-directional way. So that's the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you still want the alert data.
Still one more data. So that's a good thing. So that was pretty cool to see it, and it ended up being an easy fix. It led to something else.
It was actually on my research list to like, all right, how are they handling this? Because that was a question that I had because it's something that I always beat up in the UI here for the connectors of them recommending to create the incident, which drove me nuts.
Okay.
Um, yeah, what was the other one that drove me nuts? I think that it was security.
Security events.
Was it security events?
Might have been. I think you and I talked about this.
So install agent on Azure Windows Virtual Machine. This drove me nuts. They still haven't fixed it yet.
Nope.
They just have to change the wording. That's all.
So yeah, it'd be fine. Anyway, once you got experience, you know what they mean. You know what I meant.
I actually never really paid attention to the wording because I knew what I wanted to do until I actually had to write material on it.
Until you have the right material, and you now you're confusing. And now they say that well, the instructors suck. Whoever wrote this, right? I didn't write
Right.
this.
Well, no,
So one thing
I put it in the instruction that it's backwards. So
back to your gripe about being so much too many connectors. You see that search by name or provider? Use the
no,
tools.
where?
Well, right there.
Right there.
So yeah, whatever. Um, what else did we send them to talk about today?
Let's talk about this one, which is this came out on 325 web shell threat hunting with Azure Sentinel.
This is the future. This is what caused you to have SolarWinds. This is what caused you to have Exchange, Halcyon. This is going to be the future. And these web shell attacks are devious, easy to do once you get a certain level of skill, and super hard to detect without action being performed. It is so hard to detect the web shell malicious activity when it's dormant. And you got to be ready to catch this stuff. I think you brought this to my attention last year. You're like, this is going to be a thing.
Well, I
And
mean, I don't think it's that complex, and I think that it should be easy to spot. The reason being is that for the most part, web shells are going to have to go out and execute a system level command. Most of them do that sort of stuff. So if you're looking for that, you should be able to spot that sort of.
if your C2 skills are lacking, you're going to find yourself found out, right? The other thing is, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, man, because I haven't been a consumer of this, and I haven't really been in depth as you of this. How many customers are monitoring the activity with the same seriousness in their DMZs? First of all, customers still using DMZs. And I
Well,
think I'm seeing a resurgence of false assurance that if something is in your DMZ, that it's going to minimize the blast radius. That's the
no,
DMZ is
because
where I can see.
once they get in, they can move across. So that's not right. Um, so that's why I believe that Azure Security Center has under Azure Defender has web shell threat or detection capabilities.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, here's the thing: diligence, right? Machines and AI are going to have their place, but you still got to have a human. Why? Because the bad guys are using Azure Sentinel and Defender too. They're putting it in their lab and they're beating up on it, right? So they're going to see the same thing. If you're publishing this right here, Mr. Hacker Ed, it's like, oh, Microsoft created a new thing. Really? Let me put it in my lab. And they're blatant at first, and then it makes all this noise. They catch it. And I'm like, okay, maybe if I add another space in here, you won't see my activity, right? But web shell threat hunting with Azure Sentinel is super important now. This is low hanging fruit. It's not overly complicated. You're going to start seeing this stuff manifest itself a little bit more inside Metasploit. Hey, did Metasploit change its name to like PowerSploit now?
No,
Okay.
PowerSploit is a PowerShell framework. So
Okay, that's
Metasploit
what I
is
thought.
still
Like
very
PowerShell
much
Empire.
right.
Okay, okay, that's what I thought. I saw some and I thought I said I think they misunderstanding what this is. Okay, but web shell threat hunting with Azure Sentinel. These are some of the things that I always claim and promise that I'm going to go to my lab and put in. But these are things I can put in. Actually, I'm caught up on a lot of stuff. This IOC. Not that I
You,
run
I'm
Exchange
I'm
on
gonna
premise.
I'm gonna go back over all of our previous episodes and get the list and see where you're at with
That I
everything.
have nothing to worry about because you're not going to do it. So I'm good to
I
go on
put I
that.
put that on my list to do.
Put that on your list, right? No, for our listeners, give this a shot. If nothing else, grab the query, slap it inside your environment or your customer environment. It's non-evasive, right? Uh, and need to see what you.
All right. So let's test your KQL. Can you
Okay.
explain this KQL statement to me? What's going on here?
Well, script file extensions that match on can be expanded in your environment. So I'm looking at script extensions. I'm looking at things that are web
All
centric,
right. So
right?
what does this command do?
Let the script extensions look for these particular suffixes inside your web server. So active server pages.
So
Uh,
this is creating a variable
mhm.
with a dynamic list.
Yeah, and so the suffix is going to look for it and doesn't care what the prefix. It could be frank.asp, edward.aspx, whatever, right? So let this equal that. It's going to be dynamic. Don't worry about that. As long as you're matching these compute variables that make up a web server. Here's the crazy part about it. Why just those? Are those all be all?
There's because those are web server extensions under IIS
There you go.
for
IS. And IS
.NET.
is the underlying web server for Exchange and such
Right.
things, right? So that's why.
So I
And you
mean,
go,
I would actually put in web.config there too. .config files can actually be exploited too. So I would add
well,
that in.
a couple of the security products already watch that. They watch for manipulation of that folder and that file extension in that config file, right? So that's probably why they didn't do it, right? And then that's going to be a well-known investigation, uh, web extension and location of where that web config file. Anything that's manipulating that file, I need to know. Okay. Security alert. I'm going to generate a security alert. We know what that is. With time generated in the time window. So this is just not the time windows look like it's a variable, right? So I'm not going to give it a date time because I don't want to be limited to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, right?
Yeah, it's
I
going
want
to
to
go
be able
back
to,
3 days.
yeah. So let the time window equal that. And so I can define that in the script. Now you could variable that out. So I wouldn't leave it at 3 days. Maybe that's just because whoever wrote the prog said 3 days. I would actually go back Think about this. This attack affected Exchange 2010 and it was out in the wild for how long? So that daytime window was probably 300 days for
Yeah,
me.
but you're not going to have that data for 300 days, right?
I don't care. You never know. I had a customer that said, we've only been using Sentinel for this long, but you've been using Azure Monitor for how long? Oh, a couple of years. Bingo. Let's pull that data into. Let's take a look, just in case, right? Now we
Well,
didn't catch anything, but they did count. They did catch some other things in there, right?
so I mean, this is going to be hard for people to understand what we're talking about on the audio. So we're going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So um, the next one is IoT asset discovery based on firewall logs.
I threw this in here, man, because I knew
Just to
you were
bother
having your
me.
you were
Yeah.
having your IoT issues. Yeah, hey, man, if you got $2,000 a month just to pay, you got it. I don't have it like that.
I'm
Um,
never doing that on my credit card again.
Never again. You know the reason I pulled this up? One was the needle you, and the second thing is, I'm a big Fortinet fan, so I got a bunch of Fortinet firewalls. I'm actually going to send our buddy, friend of the show, Rod Trent, a little, gift basket. I'm gonna throw him a Fortinet in there, fully licensed. I'm even going to include the. I think they have a cloud sim, right? So I'm gonna send him the one that's licensed for a cloud sim, so he can see what they're capturing in their cloud sim versus this, right? So I'm gonna throw it in the mail. Rod, if you're listening, your package is going out
I
tomorrow.
I need to join the IoT security community and talk to these people here. The link at the bottom.
I can introduce you to Kim. Kim, whatever he runs it.
All
But
right.
this right here is looking at IoT and Fortinet being able to see it. Now, can you do this outside of Fortinet? Yes, you can. Right? I think this just so happened that this person had a Fortinet in their lab and they did it. You can do it with
Yeah.
Cisco. You could do. I got a Palo Alto over here. Big shout out to Matt Egan for sending me a Palo Alto 500. Friends share. Everybody sort of rotating the stuff around, right? And I got some other firewalls I'm gonna throw in. But no, just IoT asset discovery because sometimes you don't know you're running IoT devices. You don't know you're running IoT devices, right? If especially you don't have an IoT communication hub, right? So they could be talking directly to the internet, which is bad. You should always have an IoT gateway to talk out. Directly talking to the internet as an IoT device is bad. Everybody shake their head and say yes. Yes. There you go. What's the next one?
Monitoring the software supply chain with Azure Sentinel. This is a month ago.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this came up because I was with a customer and they actually taught me something. They said, man, we've been doing Sentinel and CI/CD since we saw the blog post, right? This helps us being able to drive this as a service, right? Being able to push things out and have predictable results. And they were code heavy. So rather than going in and doing spot configurations, they're driving Sentinel as code, like infrastructure as a code. So this supply chain is saying, hey man, if I'm getting to where you're storing your collateral, your IP, your bits, I got you. This is as bad as me spoofing your identity or owning your identity. Because if I'm inside your repository where you're pushing data out, this is also part of the future. Just like the web shell attack, this is the future of nefarious activity. I need to get where the cheese is. And now I can go ahead and spread bad cheese out to everybody. So you got to be able to look at this. And this sits on top of Sentinel has a workbook for Git and being able to see activity inside your Git. Because you still got people who are way senior than me that write code every day for a living that talks in 4 different computer languages that are still storing their secrets in Git.
Yep. For sure.
Even I know better than that. And I'm dumber than a bag of rocks, right? You don't put your secrets inside Git, right? Because now it's just like someone putting their stuff inside an S3 bucket, not knowing that everybody out there is buying Shodan to scan these S3 buckets, and they think they just had a lifetime membership for $4. Bought me one. So now I can scan all these IP addresses now, right? Because it was too expensive at first. I think the special is still going on. So you can get your Shodan account, not the enterprise, but mid-level for $4. If you're in the business of scanning stuff or looking for vulnerabilities, highly recommend that you go do it. Yeah.
All right. The next one that we have is best practices for migrating detection rules from ArcSight, Splunk, and QRadar to Azure Sentinel.
I'm loath to do this, but customers always say, hey, man, we're going to move from one thing to another. You better help us. So we had to put some out there, at least some guidance. Now scroll back to the top. What's the word in that title that I hate?
Detection rules.
Best practices.
I know, I'm kidding with you. Best
Yeah,
practices.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Guidance. Don't say best practice, right? Because we got this right here. Why not say are they referencing SOC Prime, which is a company that's really good with taking queries and uh, uh, um, one SIM technology and being able to translate to another, being able to take YAML files and be able to do stuff like that, right? So this is a guidance. Now it's good. I think I know Mr. Tan. So at least give someone the start. I don't like to say best practices, right? Because it sort of narrows me in. But this is really good. I had not seen this before. Um, but this just gives you a stepping stone to be able to do this because nobody's going to rip Q radar out and stick Sentinel in there. It's sort of like this, right? And it's going to be the period of time where they're running parallel. That's what you got to figure out until such time you displace it, right? This should be part of anybody who's looking at transitioning. Even if you're transitioning from one SIM that is not a Sentinel SIM, this is still good reference material, right? Understanding, right?
For
And
sure.
seeing. So, yeah, right. So this is good. Um,
All
now
right,
this
next one
is
is detecting who's changing alert suppression rules in Azure Defender.
so I got a practical what I saw this in the field. Once again, can mention the customer. Let me see if I can make it practical to our listeners so they get value. I had a customer that's using a MSSP, and they set up a pull from the security graph API, not a push, a pull, right? So their pulls weren't real time. They have the APIs send the alerts to some type of repository, and then their MSSP technology, their secret sauce, pulls and scrapes the API data for the alerts. Then they make a bunch of tickets. We're finding out from the time that an alert is generating any of the security events from the security graph. A good day for them, they were able to see it in an hour. A bad day was the next day. So I thought it was a push, but they were pulling from this. So the customer got frustrated with all these alerts that were coming by because you're on call. So what did they do? They started going in and suppressing their alerts, right? Here's the problem with it. Murphy's Law said when you do something like that, you're generating a pink ticket. They actually have some data exfiltration going on. And the person was deleting stuff. So you get those alerts in MCAS, suspicious activity, multiple file deletion. People were copying the data, deleting the data, and then at the same time choosing which data to ransomware or encrypt. So don't turn off your suppression. Go create you an automation rule that goes in and looks at this stuff. And so that you don't suppress it, you just give it a higher watermark to say, yeah, if I see 10 of these from the same user from a different IP address of sorts, then yes. Or if you see this activity happening over a VPN that is not a sanctioned VPN, then yes. So it can be noisy, but I tell customers when you
So let me ask
yeah.
you this, because you have these are alerts they're talking about with inside Azure Defender. Is this Azure Defender coming to Azure Sentinel, or just with inside Azure Defender that they're putting the alert suppression rules on? So you would not actually be able to change that, would you? So you were kind of crossing over in Sentinel there, I kind of felt.
Yeah, well, this is strictly an Defender, meaning that they're suppressing this stuff because if you've ever turned on Azure Defender for storage, stand by. You got to tune it. It's looking at all the transactions, right? And it is noisy, and you'll get a bill similar to turning on IoT, right? So SQL, be very careful. No, there was a product called AATP, and it was not Azure Advanced Threat Protection. It was another product. Well, basically, they were looking. It was AATP for Azure Security Center, which was looking at transactions against your storage repositories and Key Vault. So the customer's like, "Wait a minute, we don't have, you know, AATP deployed. We use another Yuba product." And I said, "Well, you said you had AATP." Well, they were talking about Azure Advanced Threat Protection, and I can tell you what they're talking about. Open up a portal real quick. Go to your
Which
go to
one?
your go to your Azure portal.
Okay.
Go home. Go to. I'm drawing a blank. Go to a Sentinel. Go to a Sentinel logging configuration panel. Just go to Sentinel real quick, and then yeah, go there. Let's go to the logs and go to get started. I hate when it does that.
Uh,
So type in SQL. Do search. This is gonna be heavy-handed. Equal search a colon and then type in SQL. And we'll
how much is going to be in this environment? Not going to be anything in this environment.
yeah. But what happens is that it is looking at your SQL IaaS if you deploy SQL and install it on VMs, and or if you're looking at SQL as a PaaS service. And so it's looking at all these transactions, and they actually call it. I know I have it in mind running. Matter of fact, if I can find it really quickly for our user, I'll show. Let me look at my schema. Give me 1 second here. We may have to run my lab since you don't run out of money. Second, this is Yuba security and audit. I'll save it for the next show, but there is is it a custom log? Huh? No, it's not a function either. But there is something called hold on. Now you got me. The listener thing. Ed doesn't know what he's talking about. Give me a second. Yep, here it is. Announcing SQL Advanced Threat Protection ATP. And so they were calling it
SQL Advanced. Okay.
Yeah, they were calling it Advanced Azure Advanced Threat Protection, AATP, and then the next little thing for SQL, and you'll get a big bill on it, right? So be careful with it. Yeah, announcing SQL Advanced Threat Protection, and
Right.
yeah, that's what I was talking about. Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to save these last two for the next time, since we're running up against time here. So what do you got planned for the next week? And what do we have planned for the next week?
Well, we're taking a break from all these smart people coming on and embarrassing us with our lack of knowledge, right? So big shout out to all of those. We had like a huge guest blast where we had everybody from Matt Solzman to Matt Egan to Matthew Lowe to Rod Trent to Nathan Swift to Jen, I can't say his last name quite right, to Nanad Doshi that came on. So you and I are going to host this, just you and I, do a little catch up, and then we got outstanding guests coming. We're going to have someone from the Azure Sentinel product group that's going to talk about advanced Azure Data Explorer and how to manage your out of log analytics data storage for retention and save yourself on cost. We're going to also have an Azure Sentinel GBB out of Brazil. She's going to join us, and I have some invitations out to a couple of more guests. We're going to show girl power on this show. There are some very heavy hitter females in security. One of them trying to track down that you recommended. So we're going to try to get that lined up. I think I mentioned on another podcast that once we go through a series of guests, I'm also lining up partners. I want to talk to partners who are running MSSPs and or who offer Sentinel deployment services, right? So I'm getting some soft commits on that. Hard part is a lot of these companies that are really Microsoft heavy, they have 2 end of years. They have one that corresponds into Microsoft end of year fiscal, which is coming up. So everybody's pushing to get EAs in. And so I suspect that the partner stuff will probably happen more in earnest after everybody realize if it's not going to close by now, it's not going to close, right? You're not going to get that renewal. So to our listeners and guests, you get to have possibly at least one more week just seeing you and I mug and listen to our voice, and then back to getting industry experts back on the show. To any of our listeners, we do have one more. God, the guy that hit us up, Brody. He reached out, wanted to come on to the show. He hit us up on LinkedIn, said he loved the show, so we're going to get him on. So Keep the invitations.
I want to hear more about compliance with him.
Yep.
So
hmm I really, anybody out here, I'll reach out. I want to start getting some of our insider threat and compliance individuals on here because that's powerful, right? I'm starting to see some of the stuff that's coming across. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that, right? So we would do what our listeners want. If they want to hear about, Sysmon, they want to hear about MCAS, they want to hear about watch list, they want to hear IoT, they want to hear more about exams.
yeah. Let's get the IoT billing person on. I'd like to have them as a guest.
I will get Mr. Kim on. I'm gonna write down my podcast notes. I'm going to invite him on. Do not run our guest away, man.
Again.
Again, uh, I can make that happen though. So now it's just trying to figure out fit people in because now we're starting to get more and more people say, "Hey, I'm free this week. Can I do it this week?" So, um, I got to hear. Uh, I think that's it. Still learning. Um, I think I think it's one more exam I want to take, part of the SC series. Big shout out to the KQL alarm modules that are part of the SC 200. I've gone through them. They're actually really good. They're practical, right?
And they're now
Not
part of the Azure Sentinel documentation also.
It is. So when you click on it, it refers you to the docs, right? Or the docs will
Right.
reference it to that. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to go back and think about something that you and I talked about. Um, Lifestyle business. You made me think about a lot of things when I was out running the other day. So I'm gonna take a look at that on a personal note. Other than that, sir, I don't have anything. I may be up your way.
There you go. Well, once I
Okay.
get my offensive security material, I'm just going to go into that little world for the next few months, and when I
Yeah,
get out of that, then
you're
I'll
going back
figure
to
out what's
being
going on in the world of Microsoft security.
you're going back to being a hacker and a pen tester. Yeah, I get it, man. I You and I haven't seen each other, obviously, with the pandemic. It'd be good to catch up with you. I'm fully vaccinated, so I don't know if that means anything to you. I still wear a mask and social distance, right? We'll kill the germs with beer. That's what I'm doing. Right here. See, watch this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go.
All right. Well,
Um,
listen. Until next week.